Well, joining me now in the studio to discuss whether cheers from Clinton supporters can drown out the criticism, even from within her own party, is Christina Asquith. She's a journalist and editor at The Fuller Project. And in Chicago is Christine Geovanis. She's an advocacy journalist for the Won't Vote Hillary campaign. Thanks both of you for joining us. Let me start with Christine Geovanis. There was a fascinating end to Yvette's report there, because Trump reaches out there and Yvette even asks the question, would some Democrats maybe turn to Trump because they hate Hillary that much? You're on the left, you're super progressive. Would you really vote for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton? Surely not.
No, absolutely not. Let's be very clear. Donald Trump is not just a buffoon. He is extremely dangerous. There's no question about it. I would simply encourage people to be better informed about Hillary Clinton's actual track record. And if you listen very carefully to her speech last night, she, was just quoted on your show as saying, this debate with Bernie has been very good for the country. Not once did she suggest that she was going to meet Sanders even halfway on some of the critical issues in terms of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice that his campaign has raised.
Now, Christine,
so
can I just come in there for a second?
It's very, very important to take a longer look at her track record.
Sure. We are going to try to take a deep dive and look into her track record. Now she's got it. She's got the numbers. What are you going to do? You're a Democrat. You're a liberal. This is pragmatism. It's politics, right? The lesser evil. You vote for her because she's got to be your candidate. What are you going to do? What's your strategy?
Well, I think there are two things wrong with that line of reasoning. First of all, Sanders said last night very clearly he is taking this through the primary next week in D.C. He's going to show the people who live, work, and vote in the District of Columbia, the capital of the United States, the courtesy that they're not afforded on a national stage, which is to actually have a role to play in at least the primary system. And he's also reiterated that he is taking this all the way to the convention. I would argue that one of the great concerns about Hillary Clinton as the anointed candidate is that, in fact, she is vastly less electable in a national arena than, in fact, a candidate like Bernie Sanders is.
Then let me put that to the other guest.
We have consistently seen in polls that she does much more poorly and even loses to Trump.
Let me then put that to the other guest. Is Hillary Clinton less electable than someone like, well, I'll ask about both, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Why should Americans, particularly Democrats, Christina, vote for Hillary Clinton?
There's three reasons why I think Hillary Clinton is going to make a very strong candidate. The first is that she has a tremendous and vast experience in foreign policy, which is the #1 job of the president. The second is that she's a demonstrated progressive with a lifelong commitment to minorities, low-income women and girls. And the third is the historic nature of her candidacy, which we absolutely cannot discredit. We're talking about a chance to vote for the first female president of the United States. That's tremendous. You cannot look at the poll numbers 5 months out before the election, especially against a candidate like Bernie Sanders, who has been supported by the GOP, hardly vetted by him. And Clinton's been turning her attention mostly to Trump, and say that he's more electable than her. It's water under the bridge now anyway. I think we're going to see that Hillary Clinton is going to win in a landslide against Trump.
She could be the first female president of the United States, Christina Asquith. But let me quote to you, feminist Susan Sarandon, the actor and Bernie fan. She says Hillary Clinton's more dangerous than Trump. Why would she say that?
That's so ridiculous, and I can't even begin to argue against someone like an actress. I can tell you, though, that there's...
If I may, perhaps the facts will actually help illuminate why someone like Susan Sarandon would say that. And I think it's very useful to go through a point-by-point rebuttal of what my colleague.
Okay, I'm going to get to foreign policy in just a moment. So let's pause foreign policy for a second, because I'm going to get to it. But let me pose to you the question: why are you going to be on the wrong side of history, Christine? In 2008, those who didn't want to support Barack Obama were probably on the wrong side of history in not electing the first ever black president. Are you going to be on the wrong side of history in not being a part of electing possibly the first female president of the United States? Christine.
Well, by that logic, supporting the first female president of the United States, I should have embraced the McCain-Palin presidential run because Sarah Palin was on the ticket as the vice presidential candidate, an outright fascist, happened to be a GOP candidate. By that logic, I should have been thrilled at Margaret Thatcher's tenure as the head of a political apparatus in the United Kingdom in Great Britain that decimated working class people and their institutions. By that logic, I should, be a wild-eyed fan of Imelda Marcos, who, standing beside her husband, profited enormously from the spoils of one of the most vicious dictatorships in the history of
okay, so you made your point,
I would say that I ought to support Hillary simply because Hillary is a woman.
Fair enough,
when Hillary herself has a horrible record when it comes to the well-being of women and children right here in this country and globally.
Okay, thank you. That's definitely
no
incorrect that she has a terrible track record on women and children. I'm glad that your guest recognizes the dangers of nature of having a fascist in office because she is, in encouraging people not to vote for Hillary, de facto supporting the rise of a fascist ruler in supporting Donald Trump's candidacy for president.
Christina,
and I will also just add
Hillary's track record.
Christina, are you handing the presidency to Donald
Hillary's
Trump?
Track record.
Are you handing the presidency to Donald Trump?
Of course
Christina?
she is.
Absolutely not. In
Look
fact,
at how
it's the Democratic
Ralph
Party
Nader got the support in 2000.
That have made it possible for us to have the stacked system, the voter suppression, the lack of accountability within the party infrastructure, not just for this election cycle, but literally for many election cycles. I would argue since at least the tenure of Bill Clinton, who Hillary Clinton backed up to the eyeballs. And it is Bill Clinton's policies right here at home domestically that we are living with that have been a disaster for poor people, working class people, people of color. And I'll give you a series of examples. And Hillary Clinton backed all of these policies and continues to support them to the eyeballs.
All right.
Well, for example, NAFTA.
Okay.
She said, well, maybe it didn't quite work out like we walked, but she actively lobbied for NAFTA. In fact, she was a key player in neutralizing environmental opposition from environmental groups and labor
You
groups
can
to
dislike Hillary, but how are you achieving
this is absolutely decimated. She was a strong proponent of Clinton's crime bill strategy.
Now I want to go back to Christina.
Christine,
if you give me a moment, sorry to interrupt you. I want to go back to Christina. I want to bring up foreign policy because you mentioned it earlier on. I think it's important. Let's look at foreign policy for a second, Christina. We have Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. Libya, in her eyes, forget Benghazi for a second. Libya, the actual intervention in Libya. She said, we came, we saw, he died. She smiled. It was fantastic. Libya is an absolute mess right now. I look a bit further back when she was running for president 8 years ago, or she was running for the Democratic nomination 8 years ago. She used her experience as First Lady as an example for why she's experienced in foreign policy. And she lied about Bosnia. She lied about coming under sniper fire in Sarajevo when the footage came out later on and there was no sniper fire. This is why people don't trust it. Can you accept that?
I can't accept that. Libya, what's going on in the situation in Libya is not the result of Secretary Clinton's actions by any stretch of the imagination. And she made, excuse me, she made a number, she visited well over 100.
Okay, Christine,
to push forward our intervention in Libya.
Let's give Christina a chance.
Please, she visited, I'm a journalist here, I am not a political partisan, but I have followed her career and I have reported from Iraq and Afghanistan, and I can tell you that she has visited well over 100 countries. She has made a number of very important decisions, the Iran nuclear deal, dealing with China, stability of a global economy, climate change, negotiating climate change deal. These are all to reduce her experience as Secretary of State
and
to a line that she said about Bosnia would be, petty at best.
Well, I mean, she lied about it.
Okay,
encouraged the coup in Honduras.
She has a number of very strong accomplishments under her belt.
She's a hawk.
As the Secretary of State.
She is not a progressive, she is a hawk.
One more question for you, Christina.
This is why the neocons actually support her
give us a moment
over
just for a second.
Trump.
I'm going to come back to you in just a second. Christina, another question for you. She's going to be the first woman to be the nominee, but she's also going to be the first nominee under FBI investigation. Could that potentially be damaging in your eyes, and might she be indicted?
Well, from what I have researched into that, no, I don't think she's going to be indicted. I don't think there's any evidence that there was criminal activity on her behalf. Perhaps it was a judgment call. However, to take that, you want to talk about a revolution, as your guest would like to do. Well, the real revolution in this country was, for more than 100 years, women fought for the right to vote. They won that right to vote. Now we have a candidate, a qualified candidate who is a feminist,
now
who is one of the first persons to speak about
women and children
women's
on a
rights
fundamental
are
level.
human rights.
How dare
and
she
is
pimp those
poised
sacrifices.
to clinch this nomination, become the first president. And this guest is encouraging women to sit out the
Truly
opportunity
pimping
to
those
vote.
sacrifices.
I don't see that.
Okay, Christine, let's go back to the very beginning and almost the very first question that I asked you about what's your strategy here. So what are you hoping for, right? So Clinton's got the numbers. Sure, we sort of know what the superdelegates are going to do at the convention, but they haven't cast those votes yet. And Bernie Sanders is still technically in the race. What are you hoping for? Are you hoping for Bernie Sanders to take her to the very end of the race so that he can drag her towards the left and towards some of his policies? Is that what you're hoping for, rather than hoping that he actually wins the nomination, which is very unlikely?
Well, that may be unlikely. That would be the least bad, I think, outcome in this scenario here. To be clear, it is not clear at this point, based on some recent missteps, that Trump is necessarily as secure in his position as the nominee either. And I just want to throw that out there as something that we shouldn't presume is fixed in stone. When you have an increasing number of Republican Party leaders throwing their hands up in the sky is a disaster for us.
But we're going to do another segment on Trump, right?
Just to be clear.
Okay.
But the reality is that going forward to the convention, it's extremely important, I would argue, that the Clinton project be held to a standard in terms of actually defining its position on the issues, instead of talking in platitudes that does everything to dance around where she really stands on the issues, because she did nothing to declare her position on the issues, on any issues at all last night in her so-called acceptance speech. And that is one of the things that concerns people who are progressive advocates within the party, that we can expect, in fact, from a Hillary Clinton campaign, a tilt to the right in order to cater to the center that she's always represented, and that has always reflected her politics. And by the center, I mean the center in terms of corporate interests, and the elites that have bankrolled her campaign to a great extent.
Christine, we are going to lose your feed in 10 seconds, so I'm going to have to thank you at this moment in time. Christine Geovanis, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your passion and your thoughts. We really appreciate having you.
Won'tVoteHillary.com. I urge people to take a look at the site. Won'tVoteHillary.com. Get the facts about a real record.
They'll take a look
and
at
least be
your
informed.
website. Okay, thank you, Christine. Christine Geovanis, thank you very much for joining us. My final question for you, Christina, in studio, because the satellite feed's not going to run out. You're right here next to me. Why do you think so many Democrats, so many young Democrats are voting for Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton, even young women? In some states, Iowa, for example, it was by a ratio of 6-1. Young people preferring Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton, who's establishment, institutionalized, old school. This is an old man. He's an old man from Vermont, and they're choosing him over Hillary Clinton. Why?
There's a lot of great reasons to support Bernie Sanders' position. I would argue that Hillary Clinton has actually made change around the same issues that he is rhetorically talking about. But I think that the most important thing is that Hillary Clinton has had, over the last 20 years, made much more change than Bernie Sanders has, and they have spent equal time in offices. I think that young people are vulnerable to what equates to $500 million being spent per month on attacking Hillary Clinton, both from the GOP and the Sanders campaign. I think that young people were not around in the 1990s when Hillary Clinton was being a true revolutionary and presenting the National Health Care Plan and becoming the first active female First Lady in office, shattering a glass ceiling and becoming a female senator in New York. I think that young people missed all of that part of her history. She has learned from that. She has learned that revolutions don't make change in the American system, and that in order to make make change, you have to be part of the establishment and work with the opposite side. We are a big, vast, diverse country of opinions, and everybody deserves the right to be heard. And Hillary Clinton is inclusive and a bridge builder. That's what I've observed from her in her 20 years in the public eye. And, you know, those kinds of things don't excite people to go to a rally and shout and change, but they do actually make change.
Okay. Going to be interesting to see.
I'd like to make one more point.
Sure, very briefly,
great.
please.
The argument that your guest is making, I don't necessarily disagree with, and I think a lot of Hillary Clinton supporters on the facts and on the policy would not disagree with her. She is playing a very dangerous game by encouraging people not to vote for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton needs a certain number of votes to get into office. If she doesn't get them, Donald Trump is going to win. And I would ask your guest to consider the realities of a Trump presidency for low-income minorities, working-class people, and women. Not voting is a position of privilege. It's a position of people that wouldn't have to live with a Trump presidency. And that is a scary thing, whether you're sitting in Istanbul or whether you're sitting in Flint, Michigan. So really, not voting is something that would be disastrous for this country because you're voting for Donald Trump.
Okay. Unfortunately, I've got to wrap. Christina Asquith, very happy to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.